This is the Silver and Black Today podcast, your source for Raiders news and information. Now, here's your hosts, swaggering boisterously.
Tuesday, Raider Nation. Welcome back to Silver and Black Today, the live version of our podcast. We are coming to you, of course, from Las Vegas, Nevada, from the Mojave Desert, where we're having, again, monsoonal moisture. Look it up. But I'm joined, of course, as always, by my man, Matt Gutierrez. Matt, how you doing on this Tuesday? You spent some time out with the kids today?
Yeah, man, I'm trying to catch up on the world right now.
Oh, yeah.
Off the grid for about 12 hours. Felt kind of nice.
Yeah, we're doing a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of projects we're working on that we're not talking about with folks yet, but we're very blessed. We have all of you out there listening to us, supporting us, whether it's the Sports Adrenaline crew, if I can spit that out, which Matt is part of, and, of course, our executive producer, Tony Cardasco, John Castanino, Haley Brooks, all those guys. And then, of course, you have the Silver and Black side, which we are doing a lot of work, not only for our Sunday show, but this podcast, videos, you name it, and, of course, the website. If you haven't visited, check it out, silverandblacktoday.com. We have updated content on the website all the time. It's not always the same old stuff. Sometimes our stories mirror, I think, what else is being done out there, but I think a lot of times we do things a little bit differently. So check it out, and we appreciate your support there as well. But tonight we're going to talk Raiders training camp, Matt. And I'll tell you what, man, it really, even though for me the weather cooling off makes me feel much more like football weather.
Cooling off? What do you? It gets hotter every day around here. What are you talking about?
I mean, when it cools off, I feel much more. But I'll tell you what, the last few days, I really feel like it's football season, right? I mean, it started a little bit with our show on Sunday where we were talking about different things with training camp. We were hearing sound. It really, I mean, after this long off season.
This is the thing we've been talking about for the last, probably 3-4 months, somewhere in there, is we can't wait until guys are actually on the field. See guys on the field. We had the draft, and you have the mini camp and OTAs and things like that, but that's all just fluff. You're just waiting to see these guys finally put on the pads and get on the practice field. And even though the pads are minimal compared to what it used to be, they're there. This is training camp. 53 of these 90 guys are going to be Raiders come September 10th, and it's finally here. We finally get to see them play.
That's right, and we saw this weekend, so much going on up there at camp. We're going to review some of that and hear some sound from the coaching staff and some of the players from yesterday. Today was a day off in Napa, and so the players were not around. The beat writers, everybody had some time, I think, to digest what's been going on thus far, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to talk about. There's plenty to talk about, and we're going to run through that. Just to outline a little bit of what's happening on the show, we'll go over that in a second, but first I want to just mention a couple of our sponsors. Now, this podcast, in addition to the website, we have great support, right, Matt? We have great sponsors. One of those sponsors, of course, you may know who the Southern Nevada Laborers are. They're the local 872. They're building the new home of the Raiders, the Las Vegas Stadium. But the Southern Nevada Laborers are also making a brighter future possible for men and women all over the valley. The Southern Nevada Laborers will give you the skills you need to become part of a workforce that's strong and committed. Call the Southern Nevada Laborers at 702-452-9210. Get the training you need for a brighter future. The Southern Nevada Laborers, 702-452-9210. Local 872 is a proud sponsor of Silver and Black Today. So let's jump in, Matt. Now, of course, we tweeted out when we were promoting the podcast, we tweeted out that we would talk about the Khalil Mack holdout, and somebody tweeted back, there's not much to talk about. There's nothing going on. And that's true. Okay,
to a degree. Yeah.
We're not going to kick the horse as it will. But Vic Tafer over at The Athletic did an interview. He had a one-on-one with Reggie McKenzie. It must be nice to be up there. We're not up there yet, but that's okay. And Vic asked Reggie about progress, if there had been any progress. Right? We've hearing all this, with all this vacuum of non-information, of nothing going on, people are just kind of guessing. But McKenzie said this. I'm going to read this. This is a quote from Reggie McKenzie. Quote, "Khalil's my guy. It's unfortunate that we have to go through this, But his camp decided to do it this way, and Khalil's not the first guy to hold out. But we'll get through this, but there's nothing really to report. He's going to hold out until he gets an extension, and that's where we are.
Sounds like his people, namely most likely his agent, said, listen, this is what we're going to do. Told the Raiders, here's where we're at. We want an extension. This is what we're looking for. And again, I keep going back to the Darnold situation because I think that money plays into it a lot because they want to come out on top when it's all said and done as far as who's the higher paid defensive player. But they said, look, this is what we're looking for, and we're not coming to camp until we get what we want.
Yeah, and it's interesting because then Vic asked any reason for fans to panic. And this is a big question because even Vic himself and other writers in the media have been making light of some fans overreacting. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, within a day after camp started, people were saying, trade this guy.
Which is just completely asinine. What purpose would trading him? Because you're bitter as a fan sitting at home that this guy isn't in camp yet because he wants a long-term contract for the job that he does every single day? In what world is it not okay for somebody to get paid for the job that they do?
Yeah.
Why would you just get rid of him for that? Is he a lesser player now because he wants a long-term contract with the team that you're cheering for?
Right.
I mean, isn't that a good thing?
Well, and have you ever, Matt, in your career at one of your jobs, you ever call in sick when you weren't sick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Been a while, but yeah.
But we've all done that, right? Yeah. And so imagine if I called in sick and my coworker or somebody out in the peanut gallery is like, fire that guy. He's not here.
Yeah.
I don't care if he's sick. Fire him.
Get rid of him.
Get rid of him.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
Like you said, it's complete overreaction because does anybody really think that, first of all, the Raiders are not going to find a way to get a long-term deal done? And second of all, that Mac isn't going to play this season? I mean, the panic is insane because you're basically saying Mac won't be there. I'm panicking because Khalil Mack will not be a Raider this season.
Right.
Who in the world thinks that this man is going to sit out for an entire football season? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, and later on in the show, we're going to be talking to Hayden Nadolny with his new segment called Any Given Monday, which is a column over on silverandblacktoday.com, but also going to be a segment here on the podcast. And when Hayden and I were talking, preparing for his interview later, one of the things that he brought up to me, and it makes all the sense, and if you're a fan out there not happy with Khalil Mack for holding out, listen. Trades don't happen in the NFL very often for other players. So you're not going to trade Khalil Mack for someone else. What you're going to do is you're going to trade Khalil Mack for draft picks. And guess what? That's not what you need. And I just don't think it happened. You very rarely get the value back.
You know what? The Raiders did that once upon a time. They traded a guy for a bunch of draft picks and cash, and that guy turned around and beat them in the Super Bowl that following season. So let's not go down that road. Let's just let them work this out on a business angle and get him into camp as soon as possible.
Absolutely. So that's Khalil Mack. Very short. We're done with it. We're moving on. Now, we did have some great press conference information yesterday, some players that were discussed. You're hearing a lot of reports out of Napa about guys doing really, really well.
I heard my guy's doing good down there.
He is.
Yeah.
And other guys who are surprising, other guys who are kind of falling off and probably have an uphill battle to make this squad. But Coach Gruden had his press conference, his meeting with the press yesterday. And one of the other big news items that I still go back to that Sunday when I announced the PUP list and I said, Conley's not on it, and you said, yet, right?
Uh-huh.
So as we know now, Garyon Conley going to miss a few weeks with an injury.
Man.
And so if you listen, what I love about Jon Gruden is even when he's angry, he puts it in such a congenial way that you understand that he's angry, but he doesn't let it get to him. Like, I don't see – I'm sure he explodes in the locker room and on the sidelines occasionally. I've seen that. But overall, the way he carries himself and handles adversity is very interesting. And if you look at ways to handle adversity, he's a good poster child for it. But they asked him about Garyon Conley and the injury, and here is what Gruden had to say about that yesterday.
I don't know if concerned is the word. I think disappointed is the word. You know, he comes out to start training camp. He's in superb shape. He makes a great play, and he gets a setback. And hopefully he comes back sooner than later. Disappointed is the big word, I think. And his heart is broken. He's put a lot into this, and he knows he's got to stay healthy and get out there for us because we need him.
So, two things there. I think Gruden really feels for the player because he's seen him work hard. But at the same time, he's like, man, we need you out there. I'm disappointed. So you got injured, sure, it happens. But when it continues to happen, I think there's a duality to his message there.
This is a number 1 draft pick for the Raiders last season. He's played all of 50 snaps in a season of football, and looks like he may not even be ready for game 1 of the season. And if he is, he's going to be behind the 8 ball already because he's going to miss a second consecutive training camp. I mean, this kid is he's snake bitten right now, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the fans. It's unfortunate for the Raiders. It's unfortunate for him. Everybody involved, but the fact of the matter is he's a health issue right now. He's a risk to be on the field because he's never there.
Well, and the Raiders have had the worst luck. I know some people want to blame Reggie McKenzie, but they've had the worst luck in picking cornerbacks. I mean, they just have. I mean, there's a history of it for the last 10 years.
This pick I thought was a good pick because
it was, absolutely.
Despite the legal trouble, they vetted it pretty well, and obviously they did their due diligence because it turned out that he was innocent of everything. But this wasn't an injury risk. This wasn't, like
never
DJ
injured
Hayden.
in his
This
college,
wasn't a DJ Hayden
never
style
injured
situation.
in his college career,
right?
At Ohio State.
And it just turns out now that he gets to the pros, he can't stay healthy. But yeah, I mean, DJ Hayden I thought was a terrible pick because, I mean, he was coming off a ridiculous. He practically died on the field.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure why they picked him, but this looked on paper like it was a solid pick. You got a top 10 talent towards the middle to late half of the first round. I mean, that's what you want to do. That's value right there.
Right.
That's Mo Hurst value right there. But he's not on the field, so what good does it do?
No, and so I think people are concerned about that. They're kind of downplaying it, but that's what you would expect the team to do because they want to keep the kid motivated and get him back out there. But certainly disappointing. He's going to miss the first preseason game next week and perhaps the next game after that as well. So we'll see what happens there. But now, again, position battles are the story of training camp, especially with what John Gruden did, bringing in veterans and trying to create that atmosphere that we always talk about here, which is around competition. So at cornerback, there's a lot of guys back there. We know about Gilchrist. We know about Rashawn Melvin and another rookie that I think this was a pick that went under the radar. And again, there was some injury question here. But they asked John Gruden about Nick Nelson. And I think Nick Nelson has the potential to be a big sleeper candidate for this year, too, if he plays well and if he has a spot to go to, i.e. Conley's out and they switch things around. But here's what Gruden had to say about so far about Nick Nelson in camp.
We're really happy with Nick Nelson. Haven't seen Nick. We never got to see him do anything in Alameda because he was still rehabbing the injury. But he has playing strength, and he has good size. And I think he's going to be a versatile guy that can compete for that nickel job. T.J. Carey was a good player for us. We need somebody that has some physical substance to him that can go in there and take on blocks, blitz, cover the slot, handle the tight end. He gives us some versatility. And Worley, he's moving up on our depth chart. He's a savvy guy. I think he's put what happened to him behind. I think he's focused now. And I credit Derek Ansley and Paul Gunther. The scheme, I think, suits these guys quite well.
So, Matt, I want to point out one thing there when he was talking about Nelson. He talked about Worley at the end. We'll discuss him too. But with Nelson, again, anything you know about Gruden and his desire to have a physical football team, and Paul Gunther too on the defense, was he said there he has a physical presence. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big deal because you have cornerbacks who are very good technically and they're good in coverage, but they're not necessarily a physical guy.
Well, Gunther's an aggressive defensive play caller.
Exactly.
They want to be aggressive.
Right.
In this day and age, it's all about timing. If you can disrupt the timing of an offense and when it comes to those receivers, get in their face, bump them off the line of scrimmage, you have those 5 yards to really beat the crap out of your receiver. If you can do that, that disrupts the timing because everything in this league offensively is timing. 3-step drop, 5-step drop, 7-step drop, and then the ball's out of your hand. You need to be able to disrupt that. If you can take away that first read that the quarterback is going to make, that slows everything down for that defense. Now they can start picking their spots. You allow those ends and you allow that middle line to get pressure on the quarterback. Everything falls apart for the offense if you can disrupt that timing. And if Nelson can be that guy, that's great. I mean, the injury thing, I'm glad to see that he's there because even though it wasn't serious, it's a meniscus tear. I mean, I've had several. I'm sitting on one right now, and it doesn't really slow me down. The big difference there is it can be painful.
Yeah.
I mean, you can run, jump, you can cut on it to a degree, maybe not full speed in the NFL kind of cutting, but he had the surgery and it's repaired. But it's not like an ACL. It's not. You're not going to lose that stability. It's not
Correct.
that type of injury. It's
no,
more
modern
just
medicine
that,
today, especially. It just
that tear in
fixes
the
it up.
cartilage, and
Yeah.
you get the bone on bone, and it's painful more than anything. But it's a quick surgery. I mean, it's like a 20-minute procedure, if that. You literally walk out the door, and you're rehabbing the next day. I mean, it's
Well,
he should be fine.
And at the end of that clip too, he addressed the reporter's question about Darryl Worley too, who is doing well. And the Raiders took a pretty big criticism when they signed him due to his DUIs and the troubles he had at Carolina. But Worley, to me, again, is one of those guys. It's a risk-reward guy. But if he plays well, you add him with Nelson, and if Conley can get healthy, and then you have Gilchrist and Melvin, I mean, they might have a logjam back there.
It's funny how everybody talked about the Raiders signing nothing but 30-something-year-old DBs. And you look at Worley, who's only 23 years old. Connolly's, 22, 23.
Yep.
Nelson's a rookie. What's his name? Rashad Melvin is 28, I think.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, he's not 30 yet.
Yeah, so I don't – yeah, they signed some older guys. They signed some veteran guys.
In their 20s.
They signed some – right. But they signed some guys also that fit Gunther's system or know Gunther's system. So it's not just a bunch of throwaway guys that they brought in here just because they need to fill spots. These guys have talent. They maybe had some off the field issues.
Yeah.
Or they fit the system.
Well, and we're going to hear from Gunther here in a minute after we hear from Gruden one last time. But yes, and that's the thing too. And even though I'm telling you he's still going to shock the world, Doug Martin. Now I get people criticizing that. Here's a guy who's been to
I'm
your
one
point,
of them.
numbers
Have been.
numbers falling. That magic number 30 with running backs. We all know what happens with a cornerback or a safety. Different story, right? Because if a guy's in good shape and he hasn't been injured a lot, he's fine. So I think you're absolutely.
Well, they
right
don't
about
take the abuse either, and that could be a positive when it comes to Martin, because he hasn't played much over the last couple of seasons, whether it was suspensions, whether it was injuries. The last few years he hasn't been that 300 carry guy, anything like that. He's been on the sideline for the most part.
Yeah, and Gruden too. He addressed one other player that was interesting. Of course, everybody's got an interest in Colton Miller, right? We talked about him on our Sunday show and what was going on there. Here's what Gruden had to say about Miller, and it's interesting who he kind of deflects the question a bit, and who he tells the reporters to ask, and we'll get to that. But here's Gruden on Miller.
I think the best guy to ask is Bruce Irvin. We really encourage Bruce to give him your best stuff on occasion. And we've asked Paul Gunther to give us some tough looks. And we've asked Derek Carr to change the protection at the last second and see if he can handle the physical and mental part of it. We've turned up the noise already. Some of this music I don't even like. I'm listening to that, trying to distract him. But, he even had to stand up and sing last night in front of his teammates. We're trying every way we can to, get him to buckle under the pressure. But he has responded, and when I met his mom yesterday, I can see why. He comes from great stock.
Yeah, his mom's up at camp, which is interesting. So he says, ask Irvin, right? So that they did. So here's what Irvin had to say about the progression and the work against Colton Miller. And I love this because, and we'll talk about this after the clip, Matt, Bruce Irvin, in the absence of Khalil Mack, has really stepped up to be the leader on that defense. And here's Irvin on Colton Miller.
He's going to be good. He's just young. He's a big guy, very athletic, takes coaching. And what else can you ask for in a kid? He's our first round pick, so he's coming in, with a lot of expectations, but he's doing a great job. We battle every day. I tell him, look, we're going to go at it every day, bro, because, we're in the NFC West. You got to go against Vaughn, you got Bradley Chubbs, you got those dudes in KC, so, we got to get them ready. We need them. So he's going to be a really good player.
So there you go.
Joey Bosa. I mean, there's some studs in the AFC West on the Raiders as well. There are some studs out there that can get after the passer. This Colton Miller scares me because I don't know, that position in general scares me. It's not Miller. You don't know what's worse going into the season, an aging, not 100% Donald Penn, or a rookie still trying to get his feet wet against some of the best pass rushers in the NFL. That position needs to be solidified, along with right tackle as well. But they need to figure that out in a hurry and put whoever is the better fit, whether it's Miller by the time the season starts or if Penn is 100% and ready to go. But man, there are some dangerous guys in this league.
There is, and I think at the end of the day, I think Penn will be ready to go. I think that's a vet who's got an injury. Why rush him? I mean, he's been through camp. As long as he's there, and he's there being a steadying presence, he's tutoring Miller,
learning
and the other
the
guys.
system.
He's learning the system, so he's walking through it. At least he's seeing it, which is good. But I love this progression and this step up for Irvin. He's been empowered by Gunther, right?
Bruce Irvin is a vocal type of leader. Him and Mac are different types of leaders.
Correct.
Mac is a guy who will lead the huddle on the field and get guys going there, and then he speaks volumes with his play on the field. I mean, he's one of the best we've ever seen do it. Irvin, going back to Seattle, he's a vocal guy. He's always been a vocal guy, and he's gonna be out in front with the media and be a leader from that perspective. So without Mac there, not only is he being the vocal guy, he's being on the field guy as well, and he's another guy that has stood out in camp so far as just being a dominant force.
Yeah, and to me that was something too that they also asked Paul Gunther. So Paul Gunther talked with the media a couple days ago, and we pulled that. So they asked Gunther about Irvin, and he repeats a little bit of what he said in the past. But again, this I think speaks volumes to how camp's going for Bruce Irvin. Here's Paul Gunther.
Yeah, I just think, when I watched him, when I took the job and I watched him, I said, I did him in college coming out of West Virginia. And, obviously, I was pushing the draft him in Cincinnati. He went to Seattle before us. So I just think his best gift is going forward, and that's what he should be doing each and every down. So instead of playing linebacker, dropping off in coverage, we got to utilize really his and everybody else's talents to the best we can, whether it's 10 snaps a game or 50 snaps a game, whatever it may be. That's kind of what we have here. We got a lot of different abilities on the defensive side, and it's our job and my job as the coordinator to get these guys in the best position as you see with what they got.
And I love this, Matt, because, again, one of the biggest, I think, injustices you can do to a player at any level of football or baseball, doesn't matter the sport, is to play him out of position. Mm-hmm. That doesn't fit in his talent, right? His talent sphere. And that's what happened to Bruce Irvin last year under the previous regime. And so now you have Gunther saying here, yeah, I've always known he's been a great player, and his game is this, and that's how we're going to play him.
Yeah, and he's going to excel. And that just makes – and when – not if, but when Mac comes back and is on the field, and you've got a young stud like Arden Key who's impressive in camp already, and you got a guy like Mo Hurst that can be great coming up the middle, and then you add Irvin – playing a natural position and going forward like Gunther talked about, and you throw that together with Mac, this could be, like I mentioned, AFC West is full of very scary pass rushers and front four guys, and Raiders would be no different.
Well, and one of the other hot names coming out, Gunther talked about too, and that is one of the guys turning heads in camp has been Marcus Gilchrist. I think the defensive back signing, he's a safety, can play corner as well.
Not 30.
Yes, not 30, but this is the one guy I was actually more skeptical about than anybody else in that defensive backfield. But he's already turning heads there, and here's what Gunther had to say so far about Gilchrist.
No, he's been tremendous. I'll tell you, I told Marcus, I said, when you're done playing, I'm going to hire you as a coach because he's smart. He understands the big picture. He can play nickel, safety, corner. So when you have a guy like that, you can utilize him against tight ends or receivers or backs coming out of the backfield. So he's been a great asset for us.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say is he could be the starting free safety this season, depending on what they do with Reggie Nelson, or he could drop down and be your nickel corner if you have to move Nelson out because Connolly's not there. So it could be a lot of shifting. The good thing is they seem to have more pieces this year that are interchangeable versus what they had last year where this guy's here, and that's all there is to it. And somebody goes down, and now you're trying to scramble. These guys are interchangeable pieces who are able to play multiple positions.
And just such a difference, again, not trying to beat up on anybody, but just such a difference in the coaching philosophy. Mm-hmm. When you hear Paul Gunther, and if you listen to that whole press conference and the way he talks about the players and the defense and fitting them in where they should go and playing them to their natural ability, it's night and day versus last year. I mean, the camp feels so much different.
Norton was... He was a new defensive coordinator, basically. His job with the Raiders was the first defensive coordinator job he's ever had. And it's Jack Del Rio's system we've talked about. It's more of a read and react kind of system versus an aggressive go after it kind of system. And I don't know how much influence Ken Norton Jr. was able to bring with him from Seattle. How much of that defense was all Del Rio. how much of it was Ken Norton Jr. I mean, there are too many variables involved, and they never really found footing. They never found good footing for the 3 years that they were there.
Yeah, and it's even camp. You watch camp open to the fans. They're passing out posters to the fans. Just a whole different feel with the new coaching staff and what they're doing.
Well, Gruden knows what it is to be a Raider. He's
exactly.
You know, and we talked about tradition, Raider tradition, and I started with Al Davis. Gruden is an Al Davis guy. Al Davis hired John Gruden. He brought him in for multiple interviews. You know, he was there the year before Gruden got hired and didn't get the job. So he understands as well as anybody what it means to be a Raider and what the history and tradition of this football team is. So he's going to inject that into his coaching style and into his practices and fans and everything.
Now, speaking of Gilchrist, one of the other things that we're hearing out of camp, and this will be our last soundbite, but one of the things we're hearing is really the praise and the hard work and really the progress that Derek Ansley, the defensive back coach who came to the Raiders from Alabama, has been making. So here's the aforementioned Marcus Gilchrist talking about Coach Ansley and his impact on the Raiders thus far.
Oh, Coach Derek is great. You know, coming over from Alabama, man, his mindset is to work hard. He expects a lot out of ourselves, a lot out of us. He comes in meeting rooms every day, and he demands attention, demands respect, because he has high expectations for ourselves.
Discipline, man. I'm telling you, I don't care what sport, what business you're in, if you have a leadership team that has discipline at its core. Discipline doesn't mean yelling, by the way. Discipline means you stay focused and you hold people accountable. And you see this now. Of course, you know Paul Gunther, you know John Gruden, you know these guys, Tom Cable, but the position coaches, too, are so important here. And I think in previous years, especially the former great defensive back, I'm not going to name him because you already know who he is, who criticized the Raiders and really didn't do a good job himself. You now see this changing at every single level, Matt.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that you have guys calling people out like that after they get sent away. But you look at a lot of the guys on this team, they were there in 2016 when this was a disciplined football team, and they bought into Jack Del Rio's system and played for each other on the field. And they went 12-4, should have been 13-3, but they went 12-4 and made the playoffs for the first time in over a decade. A lot of those guys are still here. Your core group is still there. Your leaders are still there. Now you have this new system coming in where it's all about discipline and it's all about following those leaders and buying into the system. They lost a lot of that last year. There was a lot of unrest with the way the defense was playing. Ken Norton Jr. eventually shown the door during the season. Todd Downing coming in and not getting the job done as the offensive coordinator. Just too many things, too many outside noises affecting everybody, and everybody kind of lost focus and lost sight of what was going on. The whole, the kneeling situation early in the season, which everybody jumped on. Oh, Carr's not kneeling, but he's standing there with the team, and some guys are and some guys aren't, and that became a distraction. There's just too much noise.
How the line let Carr get hurt,
right?
Which
because
is the most ridiculous thing ever.
Yeah, insane. But too much noise going on, too many distractions, not enough discipline, not enough leadership. I don't think you see any of that this year. I think you see a complete 180 in that respect.
Well, and not only that, but SB Nation's Levi Damien did a story today. This quote I love from Jared Cook about the difference last year versus this year with Derek Carr, right? So Derek Carr, his fortunes and the Raiders' fortunes are linked completely, right? Mm-hmm. He's got to do well for them to do well. And here's what Cook said about, I mean, this is a long quote, but I want to read it because it really shows how different things are. Cook says, Derek looks like a completely different person in my eyes, just from the way he's attacking the game, from the way he's attacking the challenges that Gruden has been giving him. Now, I love this piece. Every time that Gruden asks him a question, he gets it right, no hesitation. Every time Gruden asks him to get up in front of the meeting room and call out a play, run a play, get to the right check, get to the right audible, he does it every time. That's responsibility that Derek never had last year.
Yeah.
Key statement.
Gruden is, I say it over and over again, Gruden is a quarterback guy. Mm-hmm. Gruden gets the very best out of his quarterbacks. Now, unfortunately for Gruden, he hasn't had very many good quarterbacks to work with. I mean, he won Super Bowl with Brad Johnson, and not to take anything away from Brad Johnson, but Brad Johnson's not going to be a Hall of Famer anytime soon,
No.
right? He hasn't had great QBs to work with. Gannon was probably his most talented quarterback, and Gannon was phenomenal in Gruden's system. Now you have Derek Carr, who we've seen can be a Pro Bowler without question. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. He's also a guy that wants to get into the film room the second that door is opened, if not before that. So he's there with Gruden super early in the morning, studying film, going over game plans, going over all these plays, getting things in order, getting ready for the season. He's going to work his butt off to match Gruden.
Matt, I said this back when there was a lot of people in the national media saying basically that that relationship can't work. Right? Because he curses.
Gruden says bad words.
Right.
Get out of here.
But in actuality, you look at this now, Matt, and it's beautiful. They're cut from the same cloth, these two guys. These two guys could not be more alike. Okay, their philosophies on outside's life a little bit, at least that we know. John Gruden might be a religious guy too. You just don't know it because he doesn't talk about it, right? Not everybody talks about it publicly. Right. But either way, they're after the same goal. Again, it goes.
They just want to win, man.
They want to win.
That's it.
It's discipline.
Just win, baby.
I think both of them completely understand and live the Raider creed, and so they've found this together. And to me, that is a big deal. So all that criticism, and I think this is the same criticism of Gruden as a coach. Oh, he's past his prime. He hasn't been there. Blah blah blah. That's all going to go away too. Doesn't mean they won't struggle at times. But I just think that it was all false reports.
Talked about Gruden being an Al Davis guy, understanding the culture of the Raiders. Derek Carr grew up a Raiders fan.
Exactly.
I mean, he knows the culture of the Raiders. He understands what it is to be a Raider. You grow up loving a team, and then you get to play for could you imagine if you got to play for the Padres? You know what I mean?
Who?
They're a team that plays in the major.
It's the worst team they've had in 15 years.
But seriously, think about it. You grew up being a Padres fan.
Yeah.
If you got drafted by the Padres and got to start in center field for the San Diego Padres, you'd lose your mind just based on the fact that you get to play for that. You get to put on that uniform. Not only does he get to do that, he's the leader of this team. He is the quarterback of the Oakland Raiders.
You know whose story that was, too, by the way, was Adrian Gonzalez and what they do. They trade him to the effing Dodgers. But anyway, so Derek Carr is on fire. Okay, so Matt, we're gonna tell all the folks about our sponsor for a second, and then when we come back, we're gonna talk to Hayden Nadolny, who will join us from Australia for our new feature and his new feature. By the way, go read his column, Any Given Monday, which, of course, is going to appear not on Tuesdays but on Mondays throughout the course of the season, where he gives you a little bit of flavor of what's on his mind and what's going on with the Raiders. So make sure you do that at silverandblacktoday.com. And when we come back, we're going to have that feature for you. Now, let me tell you a little bit, too, about a great supporter of ours as well. And that's, look, I mean, it's football season. It's here, and we all like to have a little action on the games. Let's not lie. That's where our friends at U.S. Bookmaking come in. Why would you use another mobile gaming provider? U.S. Bookmaking gives you the best wagering odds. Start at $1.08. That's right, 15% odds to begin with above what you usually get. Best parlay payouts, for example, 14 parlay usually pays out 11-1 at most sportsbook. Not at USB, where you'll get 12.5, or actually over 12.5 to 1 odds. You just can't beat that. Play in all legal sports betting jurisdictions, and it works on the phone, the iPad, the Android, and the Android tablet. Now, download the app soon in the App Store. It's coming out very, very quickly, so make sure you do this. This is going to change the game, and we're very proud to say that usbookmaking.com is a proud supporter of Silver and Black Today. To what will now... Excuse me. All right, welcome back to the Silver and Black Today podcast. And we go to what will now be a weekly feature and a segment here on the podcast to go along with a brand new column, and that is by our senior NFL writer, and that is Hayden Nadolny. Now, Hayden is down under. He is in Australia, and you know where women glow and men plunder. Okay, bad joke, right, Hayden? For the folks stateside, they'll get the men on work, a reference. But anyway, my corny joke for the night. But anyway, Hayden's going to be doing this column Any Given Monday, which you can check out right now on silverandblacktoday.com. It ran on Monday. And Hayden, tell everybody just kind of at the top here a little bit what to expect from your column each week during the NFL season.
Okay, so every week for the last 5 or so years, maybe a little bit longer, I've been reading Peter King's Monday Morning Quarterback, which is now Football Morning in America. And I've always wondered what it would be like if there was something similar along the way that King writes, but totally Raiders-centric. And that's what I'm trying to deliver with my column any given Monday.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's I love the format that you come back with. And again, his first column ran on Monday in this format, so make sure you check it out on silverandblacktoday.com. All right, so we're going to jump in. We're not going to give you everything because we want you to go read it. It really is something fun to get through, and I think you'll love coming in, rolling in stateside on a Monday morning after a Raider game if they played on Sunday, and be able to read what Hayden had to say. All right, so let's jump in now. At the beginning of this column, Hayden, you kind of give everybody, Raider Nation out there, Raider fans, a 2018 mini-season preview, and you kind of run through some of the themes for the season, and you talk specifically about some Raider players and kind of categorize them for what you think is kind of their deal for this year. And the first guy you mentioned was kind of your breakout guy, someone that you really expect to have a great year. And that first person that you mention is Bruce Irvin. Tell us why Bruce Irvin is a breakout guy in 2018.
It's because of Paul Gunther. Gunther's moved him to defensive end. He's going to be rushing the quarterback more than he ever has. He's going to be fresher than he ever has because Gunther's going to have the defensive ends rotating on a regular basis. And they've set the lofty goal of 10 sacks for the season with Irvin. And really, based on everything that I've seen over the last 4 or 5 months since they've been working at the facility, Irvin has really taken it upon himself to be a leader in Khalil Mack's absence. And I really expect him to be a true impact player this year.
Yeah, and I love what he's done early. If you look at this past first weekend of training camp, a lot of things came out. That leadership character that you're talking about, Hayden, clear. You see it in all the writing from the folks covering it up there, and you hear it from the coaches. More than that, he's really, not only is he helping people like Arden Key and other folks on the defense, the rookies there too, like Mo Hurst and everybody on that line and in the linebacker core, but also he is there helping Colton Miller, and we'll talk about Colton Miller here in a minute, but I love that. Now, you have, as your comeback kid, I know everyone will be excited to hear this one because I think we all agree that this kid has to have a comeback and will, barring any injury or anything like that, and that is Amari Cooper. So why will Amari Cooper this year be the comeback kid?
John Gruden knows how to get his playmakers touches, and he's already come out and said that Amari Cooper is going to be the feature of this offense. So provided that everything stays healthy with Cooper, there is no reason that he can't get, at a bare minimum, 80 balls this year.
Wow, 80 balls. That would be a good year. And I like that too, Hayden. I think if you look at, and Matt and I talked about this on our CBS show here in Las Vegas, and that is Jordy Nelson, his leadership role. Then you have Martavis Bryant, who's going to, you have two veterans there. Even though Bryant has his issues off the field, he seems to be in a good spot. And then, of course, Jordy Nelson, who really is going to be that kind of leader, that almost like uncle figure there for that receiving core in Oakland. Not only that, but then you look at Cooper playing where he should play more, and that is in the slot.
Exactly. So last year we only really saw Cooper exclusively in the slot for one game, and no surprisingly he had over 200 yards in that game, and that was against Kansas City on Thursday Night Football. He absolutely tore them up, and one of the big things regarding Cooper is that he needs to be able to get off the line without really getting jammed. And when you're in the slot, they tend to play off a bit because you've got a two-way go. So you can either go left or right outside of the break because there's more space. So provided that Cooper is in the slot more, he's going to be able to not get jammed at the line. It's going to mean that he's with his elite route running, and I really mean that it's elite. He's one of the top 5 route runners in the league, provided that he doesn't get jammed. So there's no reason why he can't get open a lot, and he will be Derek Carr's favorite target, that's for sure.
Well, and I think John Gruden is the type of coach who reaches a kid like this and really develops that relationship, as he is with a bunch of players on the Raiders. But I love what he's going to be able to do with Amari Cooper. So good call on that one. Now, a guy that everybody forgets about with all that has happened in the offseason, Hayden, with the draft picks, with Colton Miller, with Brandon Parker, and, of course, the Donald Penn injury, is, of course, Gabe Jackson, who is your don't forget about guy. Why do you think people forget about how steadying of a presence he is on that offensive line?
Simply because he's also got Kelechi Osemele and Rodney Hudson on the interior as well. And they're the big names that were signed on big contracts. Don't get me wrong, Jackson's got a big contract now, but these were guys who were brought into the franchise to change the culture and to really change the fortunes of the franchise, whereas Jackson was just drafted as a third-round player. So in a way, with his massive extension, some people still look at him in not in the same reverence as the other two players, but he's equally as important.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that offensive line all bears out after training camp. But yes, a guy that people should not forget about. Now, a player who everyone, I think, agrees has to rebound and will rebound is your needs to rebound selection here, and that is Derek Carr at quarterback.
Well, if Derek Carr doesn't rebound, the Raiders aren't going to rebound. It's that
simple, yeah.
So really, Gruden has raved about Carr the whole off season, and he's gone out of his way to rave about him. It hasn't just been when he's been asked about Derek. He's really made an emphasis on talking up Derek's talent this off season, and you can see that the way that Gruden talks about Carr was a massive reason why he's come out of the booth to return to the sidelines.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt, and what you've seen from Derek Carr too, he's always a good guy, but was put in, I think, just an awful position last year with not only the offense, which was just deplorable for what the talent they had on the roster, but also for him and the locker room situation. There was a lot of pressure put on him, which is fine if it's the right pressure, correct? So you have John Gruden saying, "Hey, look, man, we're not going to fly if you don't play to your full capability." At the same time, he's not putting the entire load on Derek Carr's shoulder. He went out, they got him the tools he needs to compete at a better level and to run in an offense that is more well suited for him, right, Hayden?
Well, any offense is more suited than what Todd Downing delivered last year. It was embarrassing last year, and Carr really was in a no-win situation because after he got injured, if he took too long coming back, they would have said he was soft. If he comes back too short, we see what happened last year. And the going theme around last season was that Carr was the one who instigated Musgrave being fired and then Todd Downing getting the promotion. And that was totally from the it wasn't true at all. It was as completely the opposite, as a matter of fact. But there were certainly rumblings going around along that theme in the locker room, and it meant that certain players made it a little bit more uncomfortable in there, and it led to poor performances.
Yeah, and for being what was called a laid-back locker room, maybe too much so, there was definitely a lot of drama and a lot of Machiavellian things going on there, and one you mentioned, of course, which was him getting the blame for something that he did not do. Now, a player that you say is going to be under the radar is a significant one, and if you look at what happened in the offseason, one of the issues the Raiders with the defensive backfield, with cornerback, safeties, everyone. But from a cornerback position, you name Rashaan Melvin. Tell us about Melvin. I mean, had a great year last year, but why is he the guy that you think is going to fly under the radar, but yet be so significant for this defense to make that next step?
Well, had he not gotten injured last season, had he not broken his hand on that interception of Mariota, he would have made the Pro Bowl. He was playing at an elite level, and even last year he went against Antonio Brown, lined up on him one-on-one for more or less the entire game and kept him to like one catch. It was really special. And the way that Melvin has gone about his play last season, I have no reason to think that provided that he stays healthy, that he's going to make a real impact going forward.
Yeah, I think he's one of the steals of this free agent class. There's a lot of folks in the NFL who are calling him overrated and whatnot, but I agree with you. I think he's going to be very significant for this defense and was a great acquisition for the Raiders. Now, there are other players on this list. Make sure you head on over to Silver and Black today, where you can find Hayden's weekly column, okay, which is, of course, called Any Given Monday. Then you can read the rest there, but we're going to switch ahead now and talk about, you also said there's a rookie to watch and a veteran to watch. You picked two guys. The rookie is not surprising, and that's Colton Miller. I don't think there's a lot of pressure on him to develop this year, but I think that early on we're seeing that he's actually doing very well. Tell us why you think, or why you're going to be watching Colton Miller more than any other rookie.
Simply because he's ahead of where a lot of people thought he was going to be. So really his work ethic has showed immensely over the summer, and he put on something like roughly 12 pounds, give or take a few, because that can fluctuate when you're at such a high body weight during the season. And look, Donald Penn is currently the PUP list. So Miller's getting the bulk of the first team reps at left tackle, which means he's going to be going up against the likes of Bruce Irvin and Arden Key at regular periods in training camp. So they've only just put the pads on, so it's way too early to tell, but he's really off to a good start, and mentally he's ahead of the curve, which is exactly where you want your rookies to be right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans are coming around on this pick because there's a lot of folks for months. And again, when we're not in football season, people have a lot of time to let things kind of bounce inside their heads. And the Colton Miller selection at 15 overall really did, I think, divide Raider Nation. But now that camp started, and as you said, Hayden, they just put on the pads, but I think people are starting to change their mind. Now, a guy that you have on your veteran watch is one that we talked about on our radio show on Sunday very quickly, because one of our listeners actually commented on Facebook about it, and it's a guy I really like, and that is Ryan Switzer. Ryan Switzer, receiver, and a guy reminds me a lot of the type of player that Bill Belichick would go out. And Chris Reed wrote a story on the website on silverandblacktoday.com about kind of Gruden taking some pages out of the Belichick playbook when it came to acquisitions and system. And I think this is the type of guy who, yeah, he's undersized, right, Hayden? But he could make a big difference for this team in certain role situations.
Yeah, as a gadget player, getting 15 to 20 snaps a game, he could have a really big impact. You're going to have to know where he's on the field all the time because he is so shifty, and given that he's a pretty small guy, he's got a low center of gravity, so he can really get in and out of his breaks really quick. The Raiders really aren't going to be isolating him out on the outside, so he's not going to be out there, but he's certainly going to get his share of plays coming out of the slot. And so far through camp, he's getting the majority of the first-team reps in the slot. So I think that his role is going to be one to definitely watch over this preseason.
Yeah, he's tough as nails, too. I don't know if you've seen some of the video and audio that's come out of him and his personality. He really is one of those guys who is always going at it and is really physical despite his size. So I agree with you there. I think it's going to be fun to watch Ryan Switzer on the offense for the Raiders. Okay, now one of the other parts of your column that I really love, and I think people will enjoy reading over on silverandblacktoday.com, is your segment called 3rd and 7, where you give 3 predictions and then kind of 7 thoughts, 7 things you think. So you're inside your head down there in Australia around the Raiders and around football. The first one, the prediction you had, let's talk about the restructuring of the Julio Jones contract, which I think we all agree was a bad deal.
It's messy. He had 3 years left on his deal, so he signs a long-term deal, and then with 3 years to go, he's holding out, wanting more money. Players can't have long-term stability at market rate, given the inflation that the cap goes every year. So you have to pick one or the other, and you can't have it both ways. So yeah. I really see owners looking down on this moving forward. It's a shame that Arthur Blank, he blinked and gave into it. But 12 months' time, we're going to be seeing the same thing from Julio.
Yeah, and the players, you talk a little bit about it in your column as well, which is the players, they're looking at these other leagues, specifically the NBA and the money that's going around and some of the other things that are happening. But again, football's different, and if you want, they're going to have, the NFL players are going to have an opportunity here in 2 years, in 2020, when they sit down and bang out a new collective bargaining agreement. So to me, I'm all for players getting the money they deserve, and Khalil Mack's right at the top of my list, which we're going to talk about him in a second here. But you have a deal that you made, and the Julio Jones thing is the same thing. Most of the time you're going to find people on the player's side, especially if they've performed at an elite level. But to your point, he just got a new deal, and there he is coming back again. So now what's the precedent that you're setting? I think it is really dangerous for the NFL currently as well. One of the other thoughts you had here in your 3rd and 7 that I enjoyed too on the predictions was that the new Madden is coming out. So Madden 19 being released for those of you who play, which is I think a lot of NFL fans love the game. They love that week it comes out. But Hayden, you pointed out, man, the game doesn't change that much.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. There's a few nice gimmicks here and there, and they'll change the soundtrack. They'll change the player pictures, and the ratings will be a little bit different, and you get the updated rosters and all the online features that are no longer working on a few of the old versions. So you get all of that back, but the reality is the game really doesn't change that much. But after all, football doesn't really change that much either. So everyone's going to want their Madden fix. I'll be getting it too. And probably by this time next week, you'll be hearing a large portion of people wanting the 2K NFL franchise back in business.
Yeah, no kidding. And the Madden, I buy it every year too. I have a teenage son, and we play it as well. Although I will tell you, in 21, when Madden 21 comes out, I will be very excited because it will have the Las Vegas Stadium in it, and the Raiders will be playing in Las Vegas, so that'll give me all new incentive as they model that puppy out. That'll be fun. Okay, so now 7 things you think. We're going to hit on a couple of these. August 7th. So there you go. The 7s are wild here, which is a lucky thing in Las Vegas. August 7th. Tell people why that's a key date when it comes to Khalil Mack.
Okay, so he needs to report to camp by then. Otherwise, this season upcoming does not accrue to his unrestricted free agency eligibility. So that doesn't mean that he can't be a free agent. It just restricts his the amount of seasons that he's accrued. So it makes it more difficult, and it gives the team more power long term. So look, realistically, I don't think that it's even going to be an issue if he doesn't rock up by August 7. It most likely means that he's either going to be traded or he's going to be signed to a long-term deal. It just means that free agency is out of the question. But when you're dealing with a superstar like Khalil Mack, you're not going to let him hit free agency anyway. He's either going to be traded where you can receive some compensation, or you're going to keep him on a long-term deal. So it might be a key date, but at the same time, it's one to just keep in the back of your mind at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I also think my guess, Hayden, and again, we're all guessing here. There's been a lot of stuff out there about Khalil Mack this week, clearly with him not being in camp. But I think this is something that's going to go. We were talking about it the other day that the Aaron Donald situation. Each team, those players are waiting for one of the other teams to blink and kind of set the market. I like what Marcus Thompson wrote in The Athletic, and I talked about that on our show as well, which is, pay the guy. Look, if you look at the money situation and what he's guaranteed, I think it's 14.85 or whatever it is this year, and then you add in the extension, you can make him a $100 million player if you extend him and do it right. And why not? The Raiders are on an upswing. Their revenue is going to be higher as they move into the new stadium, and I just think you need to get it done. Now, is there a hurry to do it? Not necessarily. My guess is you get it done right at that last moment before the end of the preseason, and Khalil Mack will be on the sideline for the Raiders. You agree with that, or what do you think is going to go on?
Well, at this stage, neither Reggie McKenzie or Joel Segal, who's Khalil Mack's agent, are really talking to each other. It's kind of like two lawyers in a massive criminal trial case or a civil case where you're waiting for one side to blink. And as soon as one side blinks and they initiate the conversation with the other, there's going to be a leverage game that gets applied. And both sides right now don't want to give any leverage away. So right now we're at a seesaw that's not really moving. And quite frankly, it doesn't really seem like anything's going to move. But, things can change. Give it a few weeks. You never know. But one thing that I really need to emphasize is that everyone said, look, if he's not at minicamp, there's no need to panic. Well, 6 months ago, people were saying if he wasn't at minicamp, it was time to panic. And then the dates have slowly just gone further and further. And if he's not here by training camp, that's okay. Well, no, just a few weeks ago, you said it wasn't okay. So I think there is reason to maybe not panic, but there's certainly cause for concern right now because you need your leaders coming in and establishing the culture that Gruden's trying to create right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And getting him in camp is a priority, although if they're not talking, who knows? But again, you're right. It is a business, and I think we forget that as people who cover it sometimes, and also for fans out there in Raider Nation who just want Khalil Mack, and they say, just pay the guy. It's not that easy. It would be great if it was that easy, but it's not. So hopefully they get that done. Now, the other thing you talked about in the column as well is about a writer from The Athletic who recently reported that Khalil Mack's people don't believe that Gruden values defense. That can't be right.
Yeah, I don't buy it at all. So I respect the writer immensely, but I don't agree with that take simply because Gruden won a Super Bowl on a team that was totally defensive centric in the Bucs. They had Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, Simeon Rice. They had playmakers. Mm-hmm. And when you look at what Gruden's done this offseason since being a Raider, he's consistently said how there needs to be a pass rush on the defense. He's consistently said that the whole time. And then on top of it, if you look at his 2018 draft class, 4 of the top 6 players that were taken were on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and not only that, but John Gruden wouldn't have gone out and got Paul Gunther if he didn't think defense was a priority. So to me, some of that is just, and plus in the NFL you have to have defense. It's not you're not going to cut your legs off at the knees because you don't like defense. All right, you might be an offensive minded coach, and that's what he knows himself individually, and he might be running the offense basically. On the other side of the ball, though, you need somebody who can do it. And he went out and picked a guy that I think is going to be dynamite, and I agree with you on that one, too. Now, lastly, we'll talk about Mack one more time, and that is only because I skipped over this. That is that we also heard really late in the weekend going into Monday about the possibility of the Raiders trading Mack. Now, you mentioned the August 7th date and free agency and some of those things and how it could either be that they're signing a long-term deal if he's after August 7th or perhaps they're working out a trade. I don't think it's that time yet. I mean, Khalil Mack, to me, has been great about this, and so have his agent. There's been no leaks. There's been no ill will put out in the public like you see a lot of agents do in sport. And to me, to sit there and talk about trade, I see some fans hating. They're like, oh, trade him. Listen, it's been 3 days or 4 days in camp. That doesn't mean that they're not going to button it up. Hopefully they get it done faster than we think they will. But at the same time, any talk of trading Khalil Mack at this point, to me, is way premature.
Oh, definitely. It definitely is, but there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before we get to there, especially when you're dealing with a superstar, because more or less it's rare that you ever see superstars getting traded for what is a fair market value, and that's across all sports. I mean, you look at when Shaq got traded from the Lakers to the Heat, the Lakers were in purgatory for a number of years. So, and then if you look at superstars who get traded in the NFL, it's really hard to see players getting traded for anything other than draft picks, because the only time that multiple superstars were traded in a single trade was Clinton Portis for Champ Bailey, and that's nearly something like 14 or 15 years ago. So it means that trying to trade for picks right now, you're not going to get a return on your investment this season. You still don't know what the draft class is going to look like for next year. You're not going to know where the picks stand because this season hasn't happened. There's too many variables going around. So you really you have to hold him out. And if you're still at an impasse this time next year, or a little bit earlier, I should say, before the draft, then you obviously you've got him on the franchise tag, and then you can trade him to a team that's actually willing to give him that long-term deal. But like I said, there's so much water to go under the bridge on that one.
Yeah, and Cleo Mac's not going to miss a game check this year, so he will be back either way. And whether or not we get to Armageddon next season and they trade him, like you said, a lot of water to come under that bridge. Hayden Nadolny, who's our senior NFL writer, and this is his Monday, his column every Monday, any given Monday it's called, and we're going to have him do a segment here on the podcast every week as well. So Hayden, this is cool, man. We got to make sure people go over and read it at silverandblacktoday.com, and you're writing other stuff too, so people can stay tuned for that. But thanks again, man, for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, of course. Anytime. And you are part of the team, an important part of the team as well. Hayden Nadolny, senior NFL writer here at silverandblacktoday.com with his now must-read every week and must-listen any given Monday.
This is Mark Bedane, president of the Raiders. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
All right. Yes, you are, as we bring it home. Hayden, thanks so much, man. We're international, Matt.
Got the Aussie on, man. I like it.
That's
right.
I don't.
We got to get him out to Vegas.
Yes, he'll be here eventually.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, you missed it. I had a men at work joke at the beginning. I'm like, here's Hayden Nadolny, Australia, where women are golden and men plunder. It was a line from the song, but you're probably too young to remember the song. But anyway, that was it. We're going to close out the show. Thank you for being with us for the past hour. So, Matt, of course, Sunday means our radio show over on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
Yes, sir.
Silver and Black Today. And this week, we already have 2 confirmed guests we're excited about. Number one is we are just over a week or so away from the Raiders taking to the field for the first time in the preseason. 2 things about that is, one, our guest on Sunday with a game preview will be Lions beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, David Burkett. He'll be here to talk about us. In addition to that day, the game, we got to talk about it, the event that we're having. We're real excited to announce and repeat to you guys that we will be at Legacy Stadium over at the Palazzo hosting a game watch party, Matt.
I can't wait, man. That's going to be a good time. Doing the 2 podcasts from 5 to 7, and then get ready for kickoff at 7:30. Some food, some drinks, some giveaways at halftime.
Silver and Black.
It's going to be fun, man.
Yes, it's that event will be a combination, a twofer. You have the Sports Adrenaline team, although I think we're going to try to keep Tony Cardasco out of the building.
Good
right?
luck.
Okay. And then we have the Silver and Black team, which is us. So some crossover there. But what's great about it is we're going to do a pregame. We're going to talk about the Raiders. We're going to talk about what to look for this year after the podcast, of course, which we'll do live. They have a great studio over at Legacy Stadium. We're doing this show there live, a special day on Friday. So you can be able to listen to that and be a part of it. Secondarily, we'll also do halftime. We're going to do giveaways.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, it's always fun to get free stuff, right?
Yes, and if you're in Vegas or if you're outside, you've never been to Legacy Stadium, the place is killer, man. It's there's a sports book in there, number one, but number two, it's got stadium seating, it's got luxury boxes. It's a friggin' amazing place. The other person who will join us too is Kevin Bollinger from Fox 5 here in Las Vegas. He's been up in Napa at camp, so we're going to talk to him about his impressions as well. So make sure you join us. Get ready for August 10th. And get ready as we preview the first preseason game on Sunday with David Burkett, and Kevin Bollinger from Fox 5 Las Vegas will join us around training camp and his impressions from being up in Napa this week. Matt, thanks again, man.
Yes, sir.
And don't forget, coming up at 6:30 right here on Spreaker is Sports Adrenaline Las Vegas. They cover.
Does that mean you got to stay here?
You got to stay here.
I'm not
You're
going
trapped.
anywhere.
They cover all of Las Vegas sports, including the Raiders, but the Golden Knights, the Aces. Big news today around the MGM and the NBA. You got to listen for that. If you haven't heard that, the guys will break it down. It is a very big deal. So listen to Sports Adrenaline at 6:30 until Sunday at 8 a.m. on Sports Radio 1140 a.m. We will bid adieu. Make sure you tune in. If you're outside Las Vegas, the radio.com app is the way to go for that one. So we're going to step aside, and we will see you guys on Sunday. Thanks again for listening to Silver and Black today here on Spreaker. Take care, everybody.